country in the south of Europe, stunningly beautiful from the tip of her toe to her Alpine summits. Italy is packed full of natural wonders, secrets, and elemental forces. Always ready to surprise and impossible to tame. Late winter in the Italian Alps. 800 kilometers of rough, rugged high mountains stretching from the French to the Slovenian border. Spectacular, but also freezing cold and threatening for those who want to survive here. Only specialists like the Alpine Ibex can master the extreme conditions. They have taken over the zone between the edges of the forest and the ice. The animals are frugal and astonishingly good climbers. The males also carry an imposing set of horns, up to 1 meter long. All these qualities have turned them into a living symbol of the Alps. Alpine ibex were as good as extinct, surviving only here in the Italian National Park of Gran Paradiso. Today, however, they're also re-established in other alpine areas. With each passing day, the sun is in the sky for longer, but the snow stubbornly remains, even in low-lying areas. A bearded vulture. With a wingspan of almost 3 meters, he soars above the peaks. These majestic birds were eradicated around 1900, but in the last few decades they've been reappearing in the Alps. Around 100 bearded vultures live here today. They're also dietary specialists. They get by on bones. That's why they avoid the victims of winter at first, giving others the right of way. The crow makes the most of the short time with the carcass. The peace doesn't normally last for long. The king of the skies, the golden eagle, has discovered the food source. With his hawk's eyes, his vision is around 3 times that of a human. Dead chamois ensure his survival, as well as that of crows and ravens. Now, in late winter, the golden eagle also feeds on carrion. The eagle can't carry prey which is heavier than himself, so everyone has to take their place at the carcass. Every day the eagle needs a good 200 grams of meat. The eagle dissects the prey with his beak, although his real hunting weapons are his extremely strong claws, capable of penetrating a chamois' skull. So the crow should take care. Italy's golden eagle population has been estimated at around 500 breeding pairs. In the Alpine region, most of the suitable habitats are occupied. Alpine choughs are true mountain experts, living above the tree line. The aerial acrobats occupy the highest peaks, literally playing in the wind. It's been documented that they follow mountaineers up to 8,000 metres in Nepal. The outstanding gliders reach more than 200 kilometres an hour in descents. Beneath them lies the unique world of the Dolomites. The Dolomites form the heart of the Italian Alps. And every evening is different. Mountains and clouds constantly create new pictures in the sky. At first light the next morning, curious sounds from the mountain forest. The capercaillie, Europe's largest game bird, performs his courtship dance for the ladies. During breeding season, the testosterone level of the birds, who can grow up to a metre high, increases dramatically. The cocks, otherwise very shy and rarely seen, are now highly aggressive, attacking even humans. Despite his best efforts, on this morning, the cock remains without a hen. Yet his courtship song seems to act like a wake-up call for nature. Finally, the sun gathers its strength. The landscape is in flux. Few other regions in Europe change their appearance so radically throughout the year. For months, the vast precipitation has been bound up in ice and snow. Now the spring releases it. Crystal clear and shiveringly cold, the mountain streams of the Alps are home to the dipper. She's a real water baby, the only indigenous songbird who regularly swims and dives. Being plump, she can maintain body heat for longer in the ice-cold water. Her bones are pretty heavy, making it easier to dive. Underwater, she turns over stones in her search for insect larvae. In the early mornings and afternoons, the dipper goes in search of food. And at noon, a thorough grooming session. The dipper greases its feathers extensively, using secretion from the preen gland. Only then does the water run off perfectly. The high mountain range, practically inaccessible, is a habitat for the sure-footed, like chamois. The solitude also attracts others, however. The chamois are cautious. They've long known about the presence of this enemy. The wolves have killed some prey. Every day they need to consume 10 to 20% of their body weight in meat, some 4 to 8 kilos. In contrast to Germany, there's never been an attempt to eradicate wolves in Italy. In the early 1970s, however, there were still only around 100 of them left. In 1976, they were officially protected under law, and since then the population has multiplied. Nevertheless, wild wolves are shy. Only with a lot of luck will you ever catch sight of one in Italy. The sun, climbing higher with each passing day, ensures the supply of meltwater from the high mountains. Spring needs a little time up here. Still, it won't allow itself to be held back. Most alpine streams in Italy feed into the longest river in the country, the Po. At its mouth to the Mediterranean, it forms a huge delta, today an important nature reserve. The Po Delta Interregional Park is Italy's most prized bird sanctuary. In a few places, the delta at the Adriatic Sea is extremely rich in fish, but they don't let themselves be snatched from their backyard that easily. The hunt demands a balletic performance from the little egret. The birds hunt much more successfully in small groups than alone. The heron's beak serves as a harpoon. In fact, its entire body construction, including the neck, is designed for the purpose. The hunters are on the prowl for big game. The experienced bird grabs the red swamp crawfish so skillfully that he can't use his pincers. Some quick realignment and head shaking breaks the crab's weapons. Then the whole procedure again. Flush him out, give him a jab, then you get pinched. With a bit of luck, you might come across a female crab. They have considerably smaller pincers. Little egrets are common in the delta. For 100 years, their numbers have been growing almost everywhere. In the past, they were intensively hunted. Their decorative plumage was highly coveted in the fashion industry and sometimes traded more expensively than gold. Living much more secretively is the purple heron. its breeding colonies are always hard to reach. Before feeding, the parents first check out the lie of the land around the nest. Safety is the highest priority. Only then do the young get to their food. The extensive floodland of the delta is tailor-made for the purple herons. 300 to 400 couples are said to be breeding here. In the rest of Europe, the birds are set to lose perhaps 3/4 of their habitat through climate change. A coypu. Coypus were first introduced from South America for their fur. By now they've occupied vast parts of Eurasia, and their successful progress is likely to continue. Where generations of salt workers once toiled, today the supply ducts and facilities of the former industry lie derelict. Humans move out and animals move in. In 1985, the saltworks were abandoned. 3 years later, the park was opened. A hole in the old wall suffices for the kestrel to settle in, but they don't build nests. Originally, pigeons wanted to nest here, but they have no chance against the falcons. The male brings back a lizard, perhaps for the last time. Only one chick is left in the hole. His siblings have already moved out. Today, a gusty wind sweeps the delta. The young birds hesitate. Not ideal conditions for takeoff and landing. Staying on your feet is dangerous enough. A broken wing would mean certain death. The daily flight exercises are cancelled. The Po Delta is one of the most treasured natural landscapes in Italy. Humankind and nature have formed the delta together. In this case, a true success story for biodiversity. The nature reserve has continued to attract new species ever since its foundation. The greater flamingo, the largest of its kind, arrived all by itself. They obviously feel at home here, and they're staying. In the year 2000, greater flamingos bred for the first time in the lagoons of Comacchio. These days, the colony can reach up to 10,000 birds in good years. Thus, the Po Delta has become one of the most important breeding grounds in the whole of Europe, within only a few years. In pre-Roman times, greater flamingos were probably widespread in the Mediterranean region, but wealthy Romans prized flamingo tongues as a delicacy, causing a massacre. The constantly increasing population in the Po Delta is encouraging. Atonement through nature conservation, 2,000 years later. Flamingos are nutrition experts. Treading water stirs up microorganisms. The edge of the beak and the tongue together form a system to filter the plankton from the water. Laborious, but unrivaled. Only sometimes is there time for disagreement. Relative to body size, their necks and legs are longer than those of any other bird. And it's exactly those long legs which turn mating into a balancing act for the males. While the female gives up even watching. Flamingos are among the most sociable birds on Earth. When preparing for takeoff, however, everyone needs their own space. With around 1.5 meters of wingspan, they can reach up to 60 kilometers an hour. So stages of 500 to 600 kilometers per day are no problem for them. Meanwhile, summer has arrived in the Italian Alps. Pastures and meadows become one big flower garden. Globe flowers are blooming, and the colourful fire lilies are attracting visitors. Lush hillsides in pale lilac, a sea of snakeweed. Life can really be enjoyed here. Paul, a farmer who grew up in the mountains, still feels connected to tradition and nature. His footsteps do not go unnoticed. The asp viper has poor visibility in the flowery meadow, but she still notices the slightest human or animal movement. The viper prefers to exercise caution around cows and people. Every couple of days, the farmer checks that everything is all right on the pasture. The cows are part of his life. They mean everything to him. As always, he's brought a few treats with him in his rucksack. The cows are already waiting for them. Cattle who still live in the open air. This is agriculture with respect for nature. Whatever the mountain farmer gives his animals, they give him right back. This coexistence can still be found in some parts of the Dolomites today. The warning signal of a marmot. It announces someone's approach. They recognise the farmer, however, and seem to know that he poses no danger. Life up here is comfortable now. Lush greenery and not as many insects as at lower altitudes. Sitting around in the sun makes you thirsty. The red deer calf wants his mother. Ever since birth, doe and calf have been connected by an invisible scent bond. The mother recognises her offspring by the smell of a secretion from its preorbital gland. Whenever the calf wants a drink, it opens the gland. Then mum knows the little one's thirsty. The fuller the calf becomes, the more the gland closes again. That's enough now. The farmer is already preparing for the long winter. He learned his skills with the scythe from his father. It doesn't matter how steep the mountain meadow is. Hay from the Alpine herbs ensures his animals' survival over winter. Old trees are the starting point for his reconnaissance flights. The Rosalia longicorn is one of the most colourful beetles. The males occupy and defend a small patch of dying wood, preferably beech tree. As soon as the larger females allow, mating starts, lasting around an hour. Afterwards, he stays in the area as a precaution to stave off potential rivals. The female feels for cracks in the wood with a pointed tip on her hindquarters. She wants to lay her eggs. If she could finally be left in peace, that is. Summer doesn't last long here in the Italian Alps. Soon the evenings will be shorter again, and the shadows longer. South of the Alps, one of the most famous regions on Earth. The rugged peaks give way to gentle hills and a mild Mediterranean climate. As soon as the morning mist lifts, she appears. Tuscany. A mosaic of vineyards and small woods, olive groves and crop fields, endearing and full of treasures, great and small. History at every turn, ancient villages evolved over centuries. A pair of jackdaws enjoying some quality time. Their marriage lasts a lifetime. The village tiger has the situation and his fleas under control. But below the village, in a small oak grove, trouble's brewing. The stag beetle, the largest of its kind in Europe, has raised his weapons, his enlarged antler-like upper jaw. A rival has also scaled the tree. Conflict looms. Using their forceps, both beetles try to lever up their opponent and fling him from the branch. unless the intruder decides to beat a retreat. She lured the males using pheromones and has watched the fighting. She will only mate with the winner. The male skillfully shields his new partner, not allowing her any escape from his love cage. Yet again, his forceps come in handy. Enough romance. Now she will concern herself with the laying of the eggs. The resulting stag beetle larvae were considered a delicacy in ancient Rome. The many insects who live here attract a bird which is becoming more and more rare. The hoopoe is unmistakable thanks to its mottled crown. He feeds virtually exclusively on large insects and their larvae, so he loves the old sun-drenched groves which are full of food. Under the trees, a singular orchid paradise. Everything of distinction is represented here: the lizard orchid, orphreys, and marsh orchids. The air is filled with the scent of thyme. Wild and meadow herbs are her favourite delicacies. The Hermann's tortoise. She knows exactly what she wants, favouring very specific plants and blossoms. Today it's the yellow ones. To that end, she covers 80 metres a day, sometimes even 400. Still, that's how the tortoise clocks up 12 kilometres in a whole year. In the middle of the countryside, a sea of poppies, typical Tuscany. Wherever it's too steep for agriculture, in demolished areas and on steep edges, that's where they live. Bee eaters. They're among the most colourful birds in Europe. Of course, such a flashy plumage needs careful attention. The bee-eaters arrived late from their African winter quarters. Only now, in June, have they started to dig their burrows. They're busy for 2 to 3 weeks, digging up to 2 metres deep and shifting 5 to 6 kilos of earth. In the process, they wear down their beaks by about 2 millimetres. The constant tunnelling not only creates dust, but also leads to parasites settling in the feathers. So grooming becomes very important. Bee-eaters are skillful aerial hunters, able to spot a larger insect from up to 60 metres away. A short flight leads to success. That's required 400 times a day during brooding. The male gives the prey to the female as a bridal gift. This shows a willingness to mate up to 10 times a day in order to maximise the chances of success. the heart of Tuscany to her most southern coastal stretch, Maremma. This is home to around 9,000 of an ancient breed of longhorned cattle, the Maremmana, who live alongside the wild animals. They're constantly accompanied by a flock of cattle egrets. The birds exploit the rich insect life around the cattle, thereby making their work easier. The cattle have a light-bordered muzzle, a typical feature of the extinct Ore ox. The bulls can grow up to 1.7 metres at shoulder height. I wonder who lives more dangerously here, the cattle or the egrets? Maremma was a malaria-infested swampland up until last century. Her old coat of arms features 4 letters, standing for hardship, malaria, sweat, and blood. No other breed of cattle could better manage the harsh living conditions. Since the animals feed on aromatic herbs and grass all year round, their meat tastes especially good. The cowboys of Maremma, the so-called butteri, ensure the well-being of their horses and cattle. Their working animal is the maremmano, a horse known for its sure-footedness and agility in difficult terrain. The horses are also patient, motivated, and tough. The butteri are masters in the saddle, real men. And they need to be, here in the wild west of Tuscany. In the year 1890, according to legend, Buffalo Bill was here in Italy with his men. They held a competition with the butteri to see who the best cowboys were. The American cowboys maintained they had won, and the butteri said the exact opposite. Back to the southern Alps. The Alpine lake is crystal clear and smooth as ice on this autumn morning. Only the nutcracker is agitated, meaning there's something in the bushes. Brown bears live very secretively and reclusively, for good reason. For centuries, the great predator was feared by humans. Brown bears were mercilessly slaughtered in many places, including Italy. Around 100 animals still live throughout the country, in 3 separate populations. One group lives in the Adamello Brenta Nature Park in Trentino. Before 1999, their number had shrunk to 3 animals. As a result, 10 further bears were introduced from Slovenia. With great success, the strictly protected group has, by today, reached over 40 animals again. The bears have already laid down fat reserves for their winter dormancy. Here they show just how extremely mobile even a colossus of a bear can be. Autumn in the Alps arrives quickly. Even the trees take precautions. Larches lose their needles, but they break down the green leaf pigment of summer beforehand storing the valuable substances in their trunk and roots. The needles turn yellow. Insect hunting of the highest caliber. The white wagtail knows where it's worth a look. The deer herd has found a rutting arena. Only the strongest stag, the dominant male, stays near the female. The weaker ones keep their distance. The does and calves, who have moved away from the herd, tirelessly keep the boss at bay. By the start of the rutting, the stag has reached his maximum weight. He loses around a quarter of it through leadership stress. Again and again, he boldly stakes his claim. Digging around in the earth and extensive wallowing are typical behaviour traits of the dominant male. His hormone levels are extremely raised. During rutting, his urine smells so strongly of male pheromones that even humans can detect it. For competitors, it should be sufficient warning. He demonstrates his superiority with an imposing stance, swaggering gait, and his head held high. He constantly strides up and down his herd, checking eligible females for their readiness to conceive. Higher up, the snow is appearing again. On clear nights, it's already getting bitterly cold. A crossbill in search of minerals. Only now, in early winter, does rutting season begin for the chamois. In dramatic hunts and chases, the dominant male keeps his rivals from the herd away from the doe. Job done, now back to the lady. Chamois are cloven-hoofed and extremely skilled at climbing. They wedge their hooves into the ground, and their back legs, longer than the front ones, allow them to stand better on slopes. Even better climbers are the Ibex. Whoever lives in the high mountains must have a head for heights and be sure-footed from childhood on. The Ibex have turned climbing into a fine art. There are over 40,000 of them in the Alps today. They all have ancestry in Italy. At the start of the 19th century, only 100 Ibex were living in Gran Paradiso. All the animals alive today descend from those same 100. The young bucks are practicing their horn thrusts and really letting rip. They build up experience in the group. The prominent men are in the mood to mate. They constantly pick up the scent of the does on their tongues. They approach cautiously. No, she doesn't seem to be quite ready yet. Gradually, peace reigns once more among the animals. Only those starting winter thickly coated and well nourished have a chance of seeing next spring in the Alps. From now on, energy conservation is top priority. If it's getting too dangerous up high, one can always head down to the valleys. And serious disputes should be avoided. The Ibex seek protection in the herd, relying on experienced leaders. The high mountains allow their inhabitants no mistakes. For half a year, snow and ice will occupy the far north of the country. Then once again, life will flow back into even the mountains. This is Italy, stunningly beautiful and wild, from the Dolomites to Tuscany. After God had created the world, he had a few bits of rock left over. He threw them in the sea and stamped them into place. As decoration, he scattered over some of the best of everything. And that, according to ancient myth, was how Sardinia was created. The Mediterranean island really is a world of rocks and stones, and geographically ancient, much older indeed than the rest of Italy. Huge canyons scar Sardinia, reminding us of its turbulent origins. The rocky earth doesn't yield much, so unique natural landscapes have been preserved. One of them is Giara di Gesturi, the plateau of a table mountain. Her most famous inhabitants are wild horses. They're the wild descendants of domestic animals, but their exact origins remain unclear. One theory claims they were brought to Sardinia by the Phoenicians in the 9th century BC. The four-legged landscape designers keep the meadow well trimmed, grazing on the regrowing shrubbery. The foals grow up in the wild. No humans, and especially no stables, for miles around. They can easily find playmates as the horses live in small family groups, around 600 animals in total. The leading stallion keeps watch over the mares and herds his harem ever closer together. Close by, a muskrat family is trying to relax. People tend to be friendly up here, but for the rodents, that's no reason for the neighbours to get quite so close. When there's heavy rainfall, water gathers on the non-porous granite floor, a great attraction for many animals on this rather dry island. The horses also rely on the water. When it's hot, they have to drink over 50 litres a day. This young Eurasian coot is not being fed anymore by his parents and has to search for food himself. A rounded tail distinguishes the muskrat from the beaver, with its flat tail. While beavers build their dens out of wood, muskrats make theirs from water vegetation. They have to attend to their fur on a regular basis. Up to 16,000 hairs grow per square centimetre, 80 times as much as on a human head. The muskrat, who is in fact not a rat at all but a type of vole, has its origins in South America. In the meantime, however, they're at home almost all over Europe. The horses from the plateau feed to a large extent on plants, which they graze on under the water. Muskrats are also strict vegetarians, while the storks prefer the abundance of frogs. The Jara horses are unique to Sardinia. They don't exist anywhere else in the world. The foals stick with their mothers for about a year. In the past, they would then start helping the farmers in the fields. In the era of modern machinery, however, they can now spend the whole year romping around the Jara di Gesturi. Sardinia was formed 500 million years ago, and even today, 3/4 of the island is still made up of stones from that period. Thanks to a varied landscape which combines many elements, Sardinia is also known as the Little Continent. Grassy landscapes dominate the lower regions, an ideal habitat for the stone curlew. He always prefers to have everything within sight. The stone curlew is about the size of a chicken. His partner has left the nest and wants to be replaced. The eggs are very well concealed. A brief greeting ritual helps to reinforce their relationship, which they enter into for the season. The curlew is always vigilant to make sure that no enemy is lurking nearby. No one should know where the eggs are hidden. Both birds take turns in brooding over the eggs, from which, in around 4 weeks, the young will hatch. With around 65 inhabitants per square kilometre, Sardinia is sparsely populated. Many coastal areas especially are hardly occupied. Wild boar are happy to inhabit the free territory. They can multiply virtually unimpeded thanks to the absence of larger predators on the island. A few sows supervise the kindergarten. Offspring are born almost simultaneously in undisturbed droves. They start young with digging practice. The boars don't often clash with the Sardinians over their gardening habits, thanks to the huge amount of free land. Parts of Sardinia and extensive areas of the southern Italian mainland were formed from limestone 200,000 million years ago. Back then, the original Mediterranean Sea still reached the Alps. Over millions of years, the rain has trickled through the porous karst and formed vast cavities. Thanks to the limestone, Italy has an underground network of thousands of caves, a fascinating subterranean kingdom hardly known about until relatively recently. One of the largest limestone caves in the world is the Grotte di Frasassi, almost 30 kilometres long and up to 240 metres high. Only in 1971 did a human being first set foot inside. The underground wonder world is based on a chemical reaction. The rainwater extracts carbon dioxide from the air and then releases calcium salts when it trickles away. Limestone is then deposited in the cave, in drops on the floor, or by dripping down from the ceiling. As the deposits grow and join, a pillar eventually forms. Inside the caves, it's normally pitch black, and some creatures have perfectly adapted to it. Bats. More bats live underneath Italy than almost anywhere else in Europe. Meheli's horseshoe bat, for instance, or Felton's myotis. Some of them form enormous colonies of several thousand. Towards evening, they set off gradually to hunt. During their expeditions, they constantly emit ultrasound signals, taking their bearings perfectly from the echoes. Only at dawn will they return to the cave. Right in the middle of the Mediterranean Ocean lies its largest island, Sicily. Etna, the highest and most active volcano in Europe, has been feared and worshipped by humans since ancient times. Over 2,500 years ago, the Greeks were already building imposing structures on Sicily. The remains of some of them are still well preserved. One example is Selinunte, a once flourishing city on the south coast with 8 temples. It was destroyed by the Carthaginians in 409 BC, then rebuilt by the Syracusans. It was said to be finally demolished 1,500 years ago by a major earthquake. For small reptiles like the common wall gecko, the ruins are a perfect home. Not only do they offer countless hiding places, but also ideal sun decks. A lot of building work still goes on in the temples today, albeit on a smaller scale. Mason bees build new breeding cells from a pulp of sediment and saliva. The wild bees fill the cells with pollen and nectar, then finally lay their eggs inside. The larvae then hatch in the middle of the well-stocked food store. But the bees' plans don't always work out. The Sicilian wall lizard knows exactly how to get to the calorie cocktail. The lizards and the bees are in constant competition. Will the insects manage to gather enough pollen, then quickly lay their eggs and close the cell? Or will the lizard be faster this time? La Primavera Siciliana is not only famous in Italy. The volcanic earth is fertile, and every year in spring, the island is decorated with a multitude of flowers. While the north is still in bloom, the Sicilian sun has withered everything in the south. The rollers have just returned from their wintering regions in southern Africa. They're already starting with their family planning. The male wants to make a good impression, so hands over a wedding gift, an insect, apparently a favourite souvenir of the rollers. Not every catch reaches the special someone. He also has to keep up his strength. But to really convince her, a present alone is not enough. The chemistry between them appears to be working. The foundation for a summer together has been established. The couple will soon start mating and then later care for the offspring together. Originally, Sicily was heavily forested, but most trees have been cut down over the centuries for shipbuilding and land gain. In many cleared areas, maquis shrubland has developed, a feature of the Mediterranean region. Its main users are goats. Goat grazing is widespread in Sicily and has left its mark on the land in many places. In contrast to sheep, goats can feed for the most part on foliage and branches. The puppy looks rather sceptical at the sight of his future charges. The shepherd Leonardo has a lot to teach him. Few Sicilians still live only from keeping goats. The animals are landscape conservationists, preventing uncontrolled growth by their constant grazing. The goats have no need to fear the leopard snake. It's neither poisonous nor on the lookout for prey. It's an accomplished climber, however. The red-backed shrike had better watch out. The snake detects the scent of the bird on its tongue. But the bird won't let itself be caught that easily. 3/4 of the land on Sicily is used. Unlike on the coast, however, intensive agriculture is not worthwhile in the dry inland areas. Arable land like this is occupied by animals like the collared pratincoal. The African steppe bird doesn't breed in southern Europe often, but then Africa is just 150 kilometres away from Sicily. The birds are nervous. They've detected some lesser kestrels. In order to distract the kestrels, they decide to leave the nest. Their eggs are hard to spot on the farmland. According to scientists, the diet of the lesser kestrel is 90% insect-based. For the collared pratincoal, however, it's a bit too risky. A wise decision. As this kestrel demonstrates, it really is only 90% insects. The kestrel's destination is an abandoned farm. The grey head distinguishes the male from the female. The portable prey gives it away. The kestrel has offspring to care for. These sociable birds breed in colonies, and the old house offers the rock lovers outstanding nesting places. Some of the chicks are almost fully fledged, while others still have their downy plumage. Many a youngster is already taking considerable risks. The rollers have also found shelter here. Otherwise, they breed in tree holes or rock cavities. Not far away, some farmers are burning a harvested field in order to improve the soil quality. As if on command, the squatters make a move. Mice, reptiles and insects flushed out by the fire offer them plenty of food. The kestrels seek out their prey from the air. Quite a feat in those fumes. Storks lurk at the edge of the field for animals fleeing the fire. The lesser kestrels profit from the non-industrialised agriculture. In the mid-1990s, there were fewer than 5,000 of them. One reason was pesticide use. Gradually, they're becoming more common again, especially in Italy. Things are also going better again for the rollers. "40 kilometres north of Sicily, the most easterly of the 7 Aeolian islands towers out of the sea. Stromboli. The volcano, which bears the same name as the island, is constantly active and routinely brings the surrounding sea to the boil. The volcanic cone reaches up to 3,000 metres from the sea floor. Even in ancient times, this torch of the ocean was guiding seafarers on their way. Eruptions occur virtually every minute. With bigger eruptions, the lava can flow into the sea, until now only down an uninhabited slope. Nevertheless, the island has been evacuated several times before. Under the ocean bed off the coast of Sicily, 2 continents collide. The 30-kilometre thick African plate slides under the European. This results in impacts and fractures which frequently cause the seabed to tremble. At any time, the seams can burst open, spewing out magma, from Stromboli through to Etna. The island volcanoes make it impressively clear that our planet is continuing to change its form, slowly but surely. The future of Italy depends, in the truest sense, on its underground movements. The first fishermen set off when it's still night time. Pepe has been heading out to sea for over 30 years. In a few more, his son is to take over the boat. The majority of fishermen in southern Italy work on a small scale, for sale to markets and restaurants. The sea has not made Pepe and his son rich. They live very modestly. The only chance to preserve the often completely overfished stocks of the Mediterranean is to focus exclusively on sustainable fishing. All still seems to be well in the underwater world off the coast of Sardinia. It counts, as ever, among the most beautiful spots for diving. The Ray's flat body offers a hint to where he prefers to hang out, near the ground, where he's well camouflaged. With his mouth underneath, he catches mussels, crabs, and snails. The fried egg jellyfish has an umbrella of up to 40 centimetres in diameter and can actually swim. Sea snails are rather less hectic. The gills are hidden in the finger-like extensions. With molluscs, the general rule is the more colourful they are, the more poisonous. An unmistakable warning to anyone who wants to reach out and touch. The variety of colour and form seems to have no limits in the Mediterranean Ocean. The palate ranges from the delicate unicorn shrimp, ridding the Murray eel of parasites, via flounders involved in a border dispute, all the way to some real giants. The basking shark, at a length of up to 10 metres, is the second largest fish in the world, and completely harmless. Despite his cavernous mouth, he feeds exclusively on plankton. The national park La Maddalena Archipelago was created, among others, off the Sardinian north coast in order to protect its natural resources. The Supramonte, an imposing limestone massif, is also now a nature park. The inaccessible mountain range is sparsely populated and therefore an important retreat for animals. Whoever goes hiking here will certainly encounter half-wild domestic animals, especially pigs. Half-wild livestock farming is widespread on the island. It's not expensive, and the contented free-range pigs provide excellent meat. They rummage around in the earth on a constant search for roots, tubers, and acorns. Their sense of smell is excellent, and their noses can detect almost every treat, even underground. Antibiotics and cramped stalls are totally unknown to the piglets. Here on the natural meadows of the Supramonte, they can enjoy almost the same lifestyle as their wild ancestors. Pigs are omnivorous and will eat whatever appears in front of their noses. The domestic pigs are much more sensitive to heat than wild boars, however, and have to cool down in the midday sun. The siesta is suddenly interrupted. Sheep are also brought to pasture on the mountain meadows. The Gennargentu National Park is also attached to the Supramonte, and it's even higher, harsher, and lonelier. Here lies the kingdom of the Mouflon. The bucks are on the lookout for females. Rutting season is beginning. Most of the time, the does and their offspring live separately from the males. Only at rutting time do they tolerate the buck's proximity. The buck senses the doe's mood by sniffing her urine, causing him to flame. This transmits the scent molecules to a special olfactory organ in his gums. Every female will be checked. He's not the only one interested in the does. Whoever has the thickest skull will have priority with the females later on. Mouflon used to live only on Sardinia and the neighbouring island of Corsica. From there they were naturalised as game in virtually the whole of Europe and even in the USA. When danger lurks, the mountain sheep flee between the rocks where predators can hardly follow. On soft or even forest floors, they'd have practically no chance to escape, from wolves, for example. Autumn announces itself, and not only on Sardinia. Up in Abruzzo, the wild heart of Italy, summer is ending early. Here the mountains soar to almost 3,000 metres. In the lower regions, vast beech forests are sprawled out. Here autumn shows its true colours. Even today, it's a landscape custom made for wild animals. In comparison to Sardinia, Sicily and many northern regions, Abruzzo is still an undiscovered piece of Italy. For centuries, humans have been taking advantage of the abundance of forests. In rough areas here, it's still worthwhile to work with horses. Luca was already a forest worker at the age of 14. That was more than 40 years ago. Today he wants to head into the mountain forests with his horses to gather firewood. Winter is cold and long in Abruzzo, and modern central heating is rare in the small mountain villages. Working on the steep hillsides is dangerous. Luca has to train his horses well for this kind of work. By now, though, they know exactly how it works, and they bear their heavy loads with stoic serenity. A spiny toad feels rather exposed. The roof's just been taken from over his head. In autumn, these animals often seek shelter in wood piles. She pumps herself up powerfully, but doesn't seem to be impressing anyone. On their return journey, each horse carries up to 200 kilos of wood, sure-footed through the difficult terrain. Because it's such an old tradition, trees can still be felled, even in strictly protected areas of Abruzzo. However, the work has to be compatible with nature preservation to be allowed. Only those like Luca, who use horses instead of heavy machinery and only take as much wood as they need, are working sustainably. Before heading back up, Luca and his assistants have earned a break. Above the tree line, at a good 2,000 metres altitude, Abruzzo shows its rugged face. Chamois don't only live in the Alps. The Apennine chamois only exist here. They count as a unique species and are distinguishable from their northern relatives by a noticeably lighter coat. In Abruzzo, part of the chamois habitat has been declared a national park, since there are only 1,800 of the mountain goats still left. Rutting has begun. For the bucks, it's all about establishing the hierarchy. They engage in daring chases in order to demonstrate their strength to the females. Chamois reach speeds of up to 50 kilometers an hour, quite a feat in the steep terrain. They can only manage all this because their lungs are larger than average, larger in fact than any other breed of goat. Their pulse rate is extremely high over long periods, and they have a thickened heart wall, which allows them to sustain the effort. The buck with the most endurance has the right to the females. However, the race is far from won. The most difficult stage is still to come. The first brush off. Next try. Still no luck. Perhaps the more tolerant does are further down. Beating the male competitors in hill climbing is really only the start of a love story, which in some cases can take quite a while. Done it. In 6 months, the doe will give birth to her kid, usually only one. The buck lays down scent marks from glands behind his horns, thus announcing his claim to the territory and the females. He will also mate with others, as long as no competitor takes his place in the hierarchy. The winter comes quickly in Abruzzo. Frost has bewitched the landscape overnight. Winters here are long and hard. Snow will lie in the mountain tops for several months. Temperatures drop down to minus 15 degrees. Survival here requires a thick coat, which lynx have. The chilly season is not the worst for the big cat. Many weakened animals are caught more easily. Others fall victim to the cold. That's how the lynx can even get a fully grown deer hind. She'd be far too big as open quarry. Normally the cat could feed on her for several days. But she's not alone. A male has also smelt the goodies. Normally they'd get out of each other's way, but different rules apply in mating season. He's not letting her leave his sight. Now, however, there's no pussyfooting around the deer. Love is put on ice when it comes to food. Once the initial hunger is satisfied, the big cats hide the rest of their booty to return to later. Lynx had long since disappeared from Abruzzo and have only recently returned. There are still only very few of them around. They tiptoe back. At some point, spring will not be denied any longer in the mountains. The days will get longer, the sun warmer. The icy mountain water already ensures a lush, green valley. And when the cherry begins to blossom, winter is finally over. Bella Italia, from the rugged mountains to the Mediterranean Sea, still a country full of natural wonders and many surprises.